So our first reader tonight is F. Deal. F is a musician, a poet, an editor, a video editor, and an author of science fiction, fantasy, and horror. She began writing at the age of 9, teaching herself to type on an Underwood Royal typewriter. Her short fiction has been published in numerous online zines and print anthologies, including the Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction, and most recently in A Cast of Crows from Eastbeck Books, Dangerous Waters from Bridget's Gate, and Chris Ryan's Soul Scream anthology. She is currently assistant fiction editor at Abyss and Apex magazine and video editor for Strong Women, Strange Worlds. Her novel Esprit de Corps from Eastbeck Books is the first in a steampunk paranormal romance series set in France, featuring the gifted twins of Bellafise, who tend to show up in other Eastbeck Books anthologies. She lives in Haddonfield, New Jersey with her husband and her chow chow. She is a member of SIFWA and HWA. Her website is fdeal.net. You can follow her blog Tail Spinner at fdeal.blogspot.com. All right, let's welcome F.
All throughout America, and I think throughout the world, there are bridges where if you stand long enough and look long enough into the distance, you will hear a cry of a baby, or perhaps the young woman who lost the baby. Crybaby Bridge is an effort, an anthology from Speculation Publications. And this is my explanation of why there is a cry. This is called Concrete Soul. Soul me. Soul me. It's a simple minor third. At 7 a.m., your mother calls you to wake you up for school. At 6 p.m., your mother calls you to dinner. Doesn't matter how many syllables are in your name, it's the same minor third. Echoes of your first lullaby cooed throughout the day, soothing, begging you to trust the ones who feed and nurture you, who hold your hand as you take your first steps. Soul me, and your soul soars, at least for the moment, at least for a few short years, until the chant is appropriated by the herd of children around you, who give you new names in that minor third, wedging it into your soul to give you a new me. Tattletale, tattletale, stick your head in a garbage pail, made you look, you dirty crook, stole your mother's pocketbook, nanny, nanny, poo-poo, filled your pants with doo-doo, nanny, nanny, nanny. In every culture, every country, a universal call, a primal invocation, a concrete cry cementing your identity to all the world until the next rite of passage. First communion, first day of school, first time you wet your pants in school. For the children of Oakland Avenue, the only rite of passage that mattered was the crossing of the ancient railroad bridge with Mrs. Easton when you turned 5 years old. Oakland Avenue teemed with children, most of the families being Catholic. No waiting to get picked for a team. Someone always grabbed your hand and pulled you into the game of the night and told you where to stand, and you had half the entire neighborhood on your side. You were safe, needed, wanted, and cheered on, unless the herd turned suddenly feral, surrounding you, pointing. Nina, 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 soul me, until the mothers of Oakland Avenue leaned out the back doors and chanted your name in a minor third, the ritual that called you home to be fed and loved. Every summer at 6:30, Mrs. Easton, the Methodist Sunday school teacher, came out to set on her front steps and watch the herd playing in the street. Kickball or softball teams comprised David and Nancy, Debbie, Billy, and Tommy, Billy, Eddie, Patty, Peggy, Teresa, Chucky and Orr, Charlie, Luann, Franny, Joe, Ronnie and Lynn, Margie, Donald, Kenny, Dale, Dean, Dane, Diana, Donna, and you. When you saw Mrs. Easton, you'd all finish up the game and gather around her, and she'd listen to your news, your stories, your dreams. She'd feed your hopes and nurtured your greatest desires. The herd became Mrs. Easton's flock. Then at 6:55, she shepherded all of you who were at least 5 years old into a defile, and off you trekked up Oakland Avenue, then turned left on Graysbury, and here your heart began to beat a little faster. You could smell the sweat of the herd, even if you weren't quite aware of it, a sour tang that told of the day's play as much as the nervous dread of the ceremony to come. A vague shadow loomed a half block up on West Atlantic, a wall of concrete and iron, the first hint of the dark violence of the world just beyond the leafy trees that shaded your walk. The railroad bridge. You laughed harder and talked louder, trying to avoid the inevitable moment of decision until it was upon you. If you were a whiner, a crybaby, a fraidy cat, you continued up West Atlantic, gathering clover and Queen Anne's lace into bouquets that would invariably die before you could get them home again, trying to ignore the chant of the herd. Cry, baby, poke you in the eye, baby. But if you were brave enough, you'd cross the monumental bridge over the railroad tracks to the bank of East Atlantic, to meet up with all the fraidy cats at the railroad crossing 2 blocks later, to continue on together to the drugstore for snowballs. You knew nothing of metaphors, but you understood at a visceral level the significance of your passage over that bridge, a ceremonial declaration of your spirit, your fortitude, your honor, your courage. Looming larger than the bridge, the weight of shame that would smother you if you failed. Don't you want to die, baby? Many times a new 5-year-old would attempt the climb, only to run back to the safety of West Atlantic Bank, clasping the hands of Debbie, Billy, or Tommy, who never took the bridge, even though they were older and probably weren't really afraid because they were bigger. Wasn't there some measure of courage for the ones who didn't cry but strode defiantly away from the leering dare of those concrete steps? So me. Timing was crucial. The passenger rail, a sleek silver snake of windowed cars, haggard faces pasted to the glass, some of whom you recognized as neighbors, fathers, passed by at 6:50. But at 7:13, the freight train from Atlantic City came through. So you dawdled up Graysbury Avenue, collecting pretty stones and dandelions, showing off your treasures to Mrs. Easton, vying for her attention and affection and approval, until the moment that separated the worthy from the worthless. Far in the distance, the bellowing cry of the oncoming black steel dragon struck fear in your soul. For 5 years you'd heard that wail in the night, felt the house shake as the roar closed in on you, cursing you, threatening you, filling your body with horror as the volume drove a scream out of you into the pillow, then fading away, mocking you as you shoved your face deeper into the pillow and soaked it in tears. The dragon called you, and you quailed. Your skin turned to goose flesh. Your head rang with the echoes of a taunting minor third. Cry, baby, poke you in the eye, baby. Was it anger that drove you? Was it the desire to be accepted by the herd? You were 5. You didn't know. The bridge. Massive, formidable, but not indomitable. All of the others had conquered the bridge. You could too. The bridge would keep you above the dragon. The walkway would hold you high, and you would look down on the dragon in triumph, maybe a slight sneer of disdain. You would never fear anything again. The bridge was a testament to FDR and the CCC, and you had no idea what that meant. But it was engraved on the concrete foundations. Concrete steps, wrought iron rails a kid could poke a head through, or sit and dangle legs over the edge, as the older ones would do. A foot on the first step announced to the world your commitment to crossing. You couldn't back down now, unless you wanted that sing-song slap all the way to the drugstore, maybe all your life. Don't you want to cry, baby? Don't you want to die, baby? You set your foot to the concrete, and something like electricity zapped up your whole leg. You froze for a moment until the predatory, toothy grins of the feral herd surrounded you like hyenas ready to tear. So you wrapped your hand around the rusting wrought iron rail and pulled yourself up to the next step, then the next. The weight of the concrete dragging you down at first became lighter as you climbed. The surge rose to your belly and then to your head with each step. 17 steps to the landing. Oh, so high, higher than you'd ever climbed. What if you fell? But you couldn't fall. You couldn't stop to fail. 10 more steps up to the walkway. Breath came faster and faster, and standing finally at the top step, you could see over all the rooftops in town. You laughed and laughed because you really wanted to scream in terror. You clung to the rails, rust staining your clothes and biting into your hands as you watched Billy, Debbie, Tommy on the banks of West Atlantic gathering bouquets, unashamed, unafraid, safe. 2 blocks away, the railroad crossing bells clanged. Fear exploded in bombs of sweat in your armpits. Red lights flashed, and you clenched your knees tight against the threat of wetting yourself. In the distance, the light of the locomotive glared like a single eye of a steel monster bearing down on you, relentless. If you ran, you could have made it across the bridge before the train got to you. But if you ran, the chant would begin. So you wrapped both arms around the corroded iron, reeling head pressed between the rust, vision blurred as the dragon's one eye blazed and flared. It barreled toward you, just you, because it knew you recognized its power over you and hungered for the taste of your terror. Huge boxcars marked with arcane spells heaved toward you, any second coming for you, ramming into you, and then you screamed. The locomotive roared beneath you. You stared in wonder as it disappeared between your legs beneath the concrete. For the next 80 seconds, the dragon belched fire, the bridge rattled, the rust grated your skin, and you screamed, such a cry that emptied your whole body and filled you with hilarity. You lived. You survived. You stared into the faces of the herd as white and as sweaty as yours, and you laughed and laughed, shrill and too sharp. At 7:15, Mrs. Easton walked serenely across the bridge, down the steps of the other side, her flock safe behind her, and you laughed all the way to the drugstore. Syrupy snowballs froze the memory inside you, your courage branded on you for everyone to see. Every evening, every summer, you climbed the concrete steps until you were old enough to find new meaning in that old bridge. Long after the herd, long after the 7:13, night would fall, the street lights would flicker, and mothers called their children home. Saw me. You weren't a child anymore. Your first period, elementary graduation, Your first bra. Junior high, with its new cruelties, its new herd. Your first dance, the scent of the herd pervasive, fear now mingling with a predatory curiosity. Your first broken heart. No Mrs. Easton, just you, defiant, unafraid, unashamed. You survived. The rusted wheel grating of the cricket sang a song of endings with the monotone buzz of cicadas' grumbled discontent. Summer was almost gone, and a new rite of passage awaited. You feared nothing. You believed you could survive anything as you sat on the concrete walkway with your legs dangling between the rust-red railing posts, waiting for the 9:25 train. Dropping dandelions and daisies one by one to the tracks below, gazing into the night to catch the dragon's single eye. You were old friends, you and the dragon. Respected adversaries. You had defeated it night after night, year after year, and you never once wept. What are you doing here? Tommy, so much bigger than you. The cuter brother, smooth brown hair and blue eyes. Football, baseball, wrestling, nothing you ever liked. But you always liked his smile. And in the distance, the dragon announced its advent. I'm waiting for the train. Up here? You turned away. You never did like the bridge. He held out his hand. Come with me, I'll show you a better place to watch from. The dragon called again. It knew. The dragon had seen so much more than you could ever know about rituals, passages, and the importance of knowing which challenges to face. Its angry roar almost stopped you. No! You're mine! But you had conquered the bridge so many times, and Tommy offered a new challenge, a leering dare. So you took his hand, a commitment to crossing. You followed him down the concrete stairs, below the concrete stairs, under the concrete stairs. You didn't know, couldn't have known what the dragon already knew. Paralyzed as he slammed you into the foundation and clamped one hand over your mouth while the other fumbled to pluck bouquets. Breath came faster and you tried to protest. He pinched your nose. No sound but the dragon's roar, summoning you to be brave, challenging you to defy. And you did defy. But you failed. The scream you couldn't scream leached into the concrete, deeper than blood, deeper than shadow. It clawed its way up the corroded rails as the train barreled toward the bridge, deafening in metallic blasts, soul-saving in steel shrieks, arcane symbols cursing you as the cars loomed loud, coming for you. The locomotive bellowed, ramming the breath from you. The keening of the dragon faded into echoes. Tears streaked your white face. Life left your body. You saw only his sneer as he zipped, and his foot just before he kicked your head into the concrete. Cry, baby. Your silence released you, freezing you to the moment as no snowball could do. You faded into the night, into the darkness, beneath the weight of shame. So me. Mothers call their children home. They will always call. So me. The herd taunts. They will always taunt. Years swallow your memory. The foundation devours your flesh. Rust corrodes your bones. Clover and Queen Anne's lace flourish around you like lush tresses of hair plucked by generations of the defiant, the unashamed. Every evening at 7:13, Mrs. Easton's granddaughter now stands with a new flock on the bridge. The dragon roars above their cries, seizing their voices and dragging them into the distance. Their laughter fixes forever their triumph. The bridge shudders beneath their feet, reverberating with Tommy's final curse. And yes, you cry. You will always cry. You'll never stop crying, your soul cemented forever in a final passage. Every evening at 7:15, Mrs. Easton's granddaughter pauses, startled, on the concrete walkway, looking back once more, uncertain, before descending the concrete stairs.